So you have your 2-foot board. It's now been ripped, so it's been cut down to approximately 4.5 inches whenever you measure it, because you cut a 1/2 inch off of each side, and a 2x6 is actually 5.5 inches. So with this ripped board, we have these really nice clean edges. We can use the speed square to make our future marks and measurements. And notice that I take the lip of the speed square and place it on the edge of the board. So that lets it move perpendicular to the edge of the board. Now, this speed square, we're going to use it to make marks just like this, where we run our pencil really in towards the edge of the speed square as we move it along. Okay? I'm going to erase that mark because I actually don't need it right now. And I'm going to give you some measurements. The first mark we're going to make is at 6 inches. And your partner is going to do the same mark on their side, so keep that in mind. But it's at 6 inches. So we're going to measure from here, using my tape measure, to 6. And what I like to do is put it close to the edge here. And we're going to draw our alligator, which is just a little point, like this, a little V, little alligator mouth, pointing to that 6-inch mark. Okay? I don't want to just measure and make a line. We're going to see why. Because if I was to do that and then try to draw a straight line, it might be inaccurate, it might not actually be at the 6. So instead I kind of draw this V to point to the 6. Then I take my speed square. Remember, I'm using this lip to run along the edge, and I'm going to run so that that line hits the end of the V. Now I'm just making my mark. Okay? And that's my 6-inch mark. So that's the first mark you're going to make, and your partner's going to do the same on this side. Then I'm going to make a few other marks along this direction before I start making some vertical marks as well, or some marks that are on the link, I guess. So I'm going to mark a V at 5 inches, so the 5 on my tape measure, and I'm going to mark a V at the 1-inch mark. Now the 1-inch mark can kind of trip you up because it's near this metal part, but it's the long line right here. Okay, so let's make those 2 marks. So again, I'm going to take this, line this up, make that mark, come over here, make this mark. Then I'm going to make a mark at 1.5 and at 4.5. So notice that on the tape measure, we have different lengths of lines. We have these big lines, right, that go across the whole length of the tape measure, or the width of the tape measure. Those represent the whole inches. This is 3 inches, 2 inches, 4 inches. Then we have these next level down lines that are a little bit shorter. These are the 1/2-inch marks, so 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, and so on. Then the next ones down are quarters, so that's 3 1/4, 3 3/4, 4 1/4, 4 3/4, and so on and so forth down to 16ths. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to measure to, we just marked up 1 and 5, we're going to measure to 1.5 and a 4.5. So I'm going to come over here, and here's my 1.5 mark. So I'm going to do my little alligator, and my 4.5 mark right there. Alligator. I'll make those 2 marks. All right, so I've now made my 1, 1.5, 4.5, 5, and my 6-inch marks. Okay, I've got all of those marks. What we're doing is we're actually working towards these marks that you can see right here on this particular cut. So I'm just showing you that for demonstration purposes. This is what we're aiming towards. So the next thing we're going to do is make some 45 marks, which are diagonal marks, okay? So a 45-degree angle, if you remember from math, is just like a 90, 45 right here. So we're going to use that to connect some lines in just a second. What we're going to do is we're going to mark a 1/2 inch in on this side and a 1/2 inch in on this side. So I'm going to use my tape measure, same situation. I can lock that tape measure if it's getting in the way. I'm going to mark a 1/2 right here. Do my little arrow. Okay. And then I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch, a 1/2 inch this way. Do my little arrow. And now remember, the speed square, this needs to sit on a square end. So like I have it running like this. To make that horizontal line, I'm going to have it run right here on the end. So I'm not gonna, some people start trying to do this, that doesn't keep the line straight. So I come down here, find my mark, across, flip it over, find my top mark, straight across. Okay, this is our grid. And the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna connect these at 45s, okay? So, I'm gonna take my speed square. The way that I like to do it is I'm connecting this line to this line going this direction. So I'm gonna just move that right here until it hits that point. Now I've made my 45. I'm gonna flip it over, do the same on this end. Finding that mark, take my 45. Flip it over and now do it on this side. There's my 45. Flip it up this way. And do this 45. Okay. So I've got those. My very last step is to connect these new points. So using my speed square, I'm going to come over here, mark across, over here. If it's a little loose, you can always flip it over. Mark across. Oops. Okay, see how I messed up there? It started moving. Let's do that again. Okay. Now those are all the marks that I'm going to need for this entire project from here out. Your partner is going to mark the 6 on their side, and then they have some slightly different marks that they're going to make. All right, for your partner, partner B, we're going to actually use a mallet for some of this measurement, but this is just for the demonstration purposes. You guys will have a standardized template that you're going to be using to make some marks. So the first thing we're going to do, just as a refresher, we're going to measure 6 inches on our tape measure out from the end. We're going to use a little V to indicate and point to where that 6 inches is. We're going to then take our speed square, riding along the side, and we're going to mark 6 inches. Okay. Now for this one, it's a little bit different than the last one over here. This is more geometric design. We're going to use this rounded end to make some different radii along our piece. We're going to round some corners, basically. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the circle template and move it so that it touches this edge and your line right here. So you should get something that looks like that. And then we're going to just move this along the edge, and that's going to round that corner out. Okay. Now I'm going to move it to this end. In the same system, I'm just going to push it so that I'm touching both of these ends. Move like that. It's okay if you have a rough little spot like that. I'm going to do the same on this side. And I'm going to do it on this side. So again, I'm just touching it to both. I want to make sure my finger's over here. Open that down. Okay. So I've made those marks. Now I want to do a mark that's going to be approximately 2/3 of the way down on our piece of wood. So right now we're roughly 4.5 inches. So if we think of that, that's 1.5, 1.5. Now we're at 3, and then 1.5. Now we're at 4.5. So we're going to measure 3 inches down from the top of our wood to make our 2/3 mark. So I'm coming right here to the 3. Actually, let me do this with a tape measure. It's usually a little more accurate than a speed square. I'm going to point to my 3. I'm going to come over here to the end. There's my mark. And I'm just going to ride right along that. That's the other mark that you need. So you need one that's 2/3 down, and this one's done. So I'm going to label this B. We're going to label this one A. And we're going to make sure we put our name somewhere in the middle on our wood. So I'm going to put whatever my team's name is or my partner's names.